walked up to the funeral home, trailing Dee by a few steps as I fumbled with my suit jacket and cuffs. I asked her to help with the buttons, but she kept walking, trying to compose herself. She fixed a wrinkle in her skirt. We were greeted by 2 employees. I gave them our names and the shorter one looked us up in the registry. After twisting up her face and giving me a weird look, she eventually found what she needed. She pointed out the bathrooms and led us to the visitation. A glistening closed casket stood alone in the corner of the room, flanked on both sides by a mountain of flowers. The picture frame on top didn't show the deceased, just a set of hydrangeas. Dee loves hydrangeas. It must be tough to enjoy things you like when you're at a funeral. Dee and I were shocked when we heard the diagnosis. Aggressive, rare, fast. Poor woman was gone within weeks. The shock broke her husband. He'd go catatonic for hours and scream every time he remembered she was gone. He would regularly be found walking outside at 3 a.m., enjoying the sunshine. Sometimes he talked into the air. I suppose he needed some coping mechanisms, and detachment from reality was the best he could do. We all react differently. As we paid our respects, I couldn't help looking at the messages on the flower arrangements. I spotted a generic message and whispered to Dee how they could have at least put in a few seconds of effort for final goodbyes. I greeted the sad, yet composed family. I wondered whether they had accepted the finality of the situation. I looked around and realized I recognized nearly everyone there. It's remarkable how much friends can overlap, especially in a small community. We exchanged how are yous as we waited. As the visitation drew to a close, everyone shuffled into the chapel for the ceremony. The casket stood prominently, the same hydrangeas adorning the picture frame on top. Dee and I sat at the back and got a few stares from the others, who were spread out through the pews. The front row was empty. People can be so childish sometimes. It was a fairly quick affair, full of prayers for the deceased and forgiveness from a higher power. As the priest went about his business, he motioned for her husband, Paul, to say a few words. Except the poor man's name is Chris. My name is Paul. I looked over to Dee, half chuckling at the mistake. She wasn't there anymore. And the crowd was now looking at me. I looked at the picture of the smiling face above the casket and screamed. I walked into the pawn shop, brushing the water off my shoulders and cap. The front window read "Closing Forever Sale" in giant red letters. It was my best chance at getting her something special. Clutching the small envelope in my pocket, I scanned the glass display counter. And then I saw it. It stood out like a sore thumb, the buttery yellow gold screaming out from the otherwise dreary and muted shop. I knew it was the one for her when I looked closer and saw matching initials engraved on the inside. My luck was finally turning. I threw the envelope down on the counter and prayed it was enough. The cashier took it without counting and handed me the ring along with a small booklet, her eyes both grateful and apologetic. She turned and left without a word. I stuffed both items into my pocket and went home. I laid in bed that night twirling the ring in my fingers. It was strangely heavy and looked old, like something you would pass down through generations as an heirloom, but glistened even in the dim moonlight. I remembered the booklet and opened its thick, yellowed cover. On each page was a list of names with 2 dates next to them. The tiny booklet held so many I didn't bother counting. The latest entry was not fully 3 months ago. I turned the page, and then I saw my name, along with the date I bought the ring. I racked my brain trying to figure out how it got there. Did the cashier write it in? How did she know my name? Did I write it and forget? A knock came at my apartment door, abruptly ending my mental spiral. A stereotypical gift box sat on the ground. Inside were coupons for free tuxedo and gown rentals, along with 5 pre-booked hours at a nearby venue, exactly 1 month away. She cried when I showed her. The dream we couldn't afford suddenly became a reality. 2 weeks later, we got our rentals. My tux was white instead of black, and her dress was a size too big. Annoying, but fixable. The following week, her brother was in an accident. Nothing too serious, but enough to keep him in the hospital and away from our wedding. 3 days before the wedding, I lost my job and our only source of income. We decided to press on and figure things out as husband and wife later. The day before the wedding, my chest felt like it had been the target of a professional boxer's training. Without a source of income, a doctor's visit was out of the question. We pressed on. On the day, the pain got worse. I decided to go through with it, not wanting to ruin our big day. I looked at the ring one final time before slipping it into my pocket, and opened the booklet to see a new entry next to my name. Today's date. Warning, there was a lot of domestic violence involved, so if that's not your cup of tea, then revert your attention. As well as a missing dog. Anyways. So I was 6 years old. This house was the first that I had my own bedroom and Dreamcast. It was a great-looking house. The backyard is a tad small, with a bare tree always void of leaves. I know everyone wants to know the good stuff, that which traumatized me and my siblings, so I'll get right to it. It all started a month after moving in. My dad goes down to the basement where a door was to the left. The basement had a storm-type door you lift from the ground. The door downstairs, however, would not open. It never did. My dad tried picking the lock. He used a knife to try that and then stabbed the wooden door. The knife snapped. No big deal. He then told my mom to get a hammer. I heard a loud bang, and he came up soon after and told my mom the head of the hammer broke. The door handle was indestructible, and from what my dad said, it seemed like a lot of mice corpses were near that door. We never opened that door, nor received answers about it. 2 days later, we got home from my uncle's house. My brothers and dad turned the Nintendo 64 on to play Mortal Kombat. My mom yelled for my dad and said, "I'm about to burn this house down. Come here." So we all went into the kitchen. There were cockroaches. Not a few. Hundreds in the kitchen. Crawling on the stove, the cabinets, inside the cabinets, and some found their way inside the refrigerator. My dad was slapping away with his shoe for a while until he left to buy Raid. We played on the floors. My brother started yelling to my mom that we had more bugs. There were hundreds. More cockroaches in the carpets. Like when we pulled the carpets from the walls, there were hundreds crawling under the carpets and between the walls, going in and out of the small gaps between the wall trim and floor. Fast forward 2 weeks. We got a dog named Rocky. Very little fellow. We had him for almost 4 days, as I always loved playing with him. I'm an animal-loving man, and small fast-running dogs did cute things. I played with Rocky, and he ran into my room back and forward. He ran in, but never came out. I mean that with complete certainty. My mom was angry, as well as my dad. Neither the two mad at us 'cause they knew we didn't open windows or outside doors. They never found Rocky. He just went in and never came back. We looked everywhere. A couple roach-infested months later, they moved to the kitchen and the door in the basement that never opens. My cousin Dee stayed the night. She slept on the floor in my room, and me and her slept on the bunk beds. I woke up hearing loud shuffling and my brother opening the door. From what he and Dee told me, they were both hearing a bunch of incoherent whispers and their names individually being called. I never heard Dee's name, and Dee never heard ours name. They both heard their own names. They both said they were trying to get each other's attention, but couldn't tell because of how much they heard their names said. They said it came from the closet. My mom said they both had bad dreams and was really sweaty standing in front of the door. I guess my mom heard something or had a mama sense. She never said, but they both recounted the exact same event. Their own names, coming from the closet. A week or two later, my mom and dad fought. Like literally. They've never gotten loud with each other or hurt each other. This fight started 'cause my mom threw a potato wedge at my dad playfully. He broke her leg, tossed her across the room, bulldozed her multiple times, and basically beat her like an abused child. My brothers were crying uncontrollably, thinking he would kill her. So B, my younger brother, called 911 at the age of 2.5. They both played it off like they fell. After that fight, they proceeded to fight like that at least 120 times from the age of 6 and 10. Sometime shortly afterwards, I went into the closet. I always felt so chilly. I felt a hand on my shoulder until I walked out of it. Didn't know what to call it back then, but I just assumed my shirt was tight. A couple months before we moved, my dad was playing with B. He picked him up towards the closet in my parents' room. B loved to go high and play in places. This time was different. He hysterically broke out crying and flailing his arms. My dad put him down and asked, "What's the matter?" He said a black man with red eyes was in the dark of the closet. He still remembers it to this day. I asked him about it last year or two ago, but it's been 20 years. He still remembers it all the same. The black crow emblem above our address on our house always scared me, and I don't know why. This house was full of evil. Always cold. The roaches never left. So we moved, but I came back. 8 years later. No one lived there and it was being renovated. Me and my friend A from my previous stories broke in. The house was 35 degrees colder at least, and it was summertime around this time. No one lived there since then. How do I know? Because my dad's VCR tapes were all still there. He had 9 boxes worth that we dropped and left. We moved suddenly, so I didn't ask why back then, but they were his. He was a professional wrestler in the IPW circuit, a small wrestling organization in Indiana. His recorded matches were in the boxes. I took a couple, and Twister. That was his favorite movie to watch with my mom. I couldn't take it all, but I took what he would have wanted. So I had to go to the basement. To see the door. It was cemented in. You could see where the door was. It was covered in cement, blocking it off from the rest of the world. Outline and all. The hole in my room was still there. It opened months after Rocky went missing, so that didn't eat Rocky. The house did, I believe. It was so cold in the basement. That whole house felt so heavy to walk in. Whatever curse was in it latched onto my family. Our lives were never the same after that house. Now I know why they left so suddenly. That house was from hell. The creaks, the bad dreams we all had. The feeling like it would never really be our home. That house wasn't a home. It was hell, disguised as a house. Growing up, I've always been afraid of the dark. I would always light up a room before entering. Dad would always tuck me away in bed and read me bedtime stories. He already knew the drill. Checking the closet and under the bed for monsters. He would assure me every time that nothing is hiding in my closet or under my bed. I kept my lamp turned on throughout the night. One night, I woke up, feeling a bit dizzy. My lamp was already shut off. I noticed a figure on the corner of my room. I rubbed my eyes, hoping I would see it clearer. It seemed like a shadow. The light from my window was too weak for me to identify the figure that was sitting. The longer I stared, the more my eyes adjusted to the darkness, and there I saw it. A man wearing a suit and a tie, with his face painted like that of a clown, with wide eyes and an eerily big smile. Shivers ran down my spine. I froze in fear. My heart started throbbing faster as every second went by. I was perspiring hard. I could feel his eyes penetrating my soul. My eyes were hurting, none of us is blinking. It's too much, it's too much. It's okay, Jen, you're safe now. My psychologist calmed me down. I opened my eyes. I'm in a room, lying down. My psychologist is sitting beside me. Don't worry, Jen, you don't have to rush it. You'll forget him soon, just give it some time. He added. He handed me a glass of water. I slowly drank the water. Years had already passed, and I still can't forget about that night and that man. I cried. You're safe now, Jen. My psychologist gritted his teeth. I saw at a glance. His face,